Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Ida Midget. I'm Chair and Professor of the Department of Counselor Education at Boise State University. My program of research is in the area of bullying prevention and intervention. And for the past 10 years, I have been working with schools throughout the state of Idaho, ranging from elementary to high schools, both implementing and evaluating a brief, by-standard bullying intervention program that I designed. I developed this program in response to a local school counselor who wanted help addressing bullying at her school. During this presentation, I'll share with you many findings from our research studies, as well as findings from other studies in order to best address and prevent bullying and cyberbullying. During this part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about bullying statistics, the definition of bullying, types of bullying, and finally negative consequences for students who experience bullying as targets. So let's begin by talking about bullying and cyberbullying basics for parents. I'm going to start by asking you a few questions about bullying. The first question that I have for you is, what percentage of high school students in Idaho do you think report being bullied? So think about your answer. Let's take a look at the trend. So in high school in Idaho, about 26% of students report being bullied, compared to 19% in the United States. Also keep in mind that in high school, bullying begins to go down. Bullying peaks in middle school, when students transition to a new building and are trying to reestablish their hierarchy. Second question that I have for you. What do you think is the percentage of high school students in Idaho that report being cyberbullied? Let's look at the trend. So in Idaho, it's about 20.3% compared to about 15% across the country. Also, cyberbullying peaks in high school, so it's good to keep that in mind. Next question. Among students who are bullied, what percent do you think report bullying to an adult? So let's take a look. So a little bit over half of students in elementary and middle school students report bullying, and only about 1/3 of high school students report bullying. And there's many reasons for that. One reason could be, as high school students are maturing, they feel like they need to take care of situations themselves and not ask for help. Another reason could be, and it's something that we have found in our studies, that students in high school report that they believe that adults tend to minimize and normalize bullying. And again, this is just student perception, but it impacts behavior. Next question. What do you think are the most common forms of bullying among students? Let's see what it says. Being made fun of and spreading rumors. And the last question that I have. What do you think is the most common reason cited for being bullied? And the answer is physical appearance. All right, so now let's take a look at what is bullying. Let's talk about the definition. Bullying is repeated, negative, unwanted, aggressive behavior that's conducted by one student or a group of students, and it's targeted at somebody. The student who is bullied can't stop it from happening by him or herself, and the student often needs adult help. The bully has more power than the target, so that power generally comes in the form of having more friends, having more status or popularity, or having more physical size and athleticism. Finally, even though I said that the bullying behavior has to be repeated, if an incident is sufficiently traumatic, all that it takes is one time for it to be considered bullying. So for example, if a student is pushed in front of a bus, that's enough for it to be considered bullying behavior. So now let's look at what bullying isn't. And this is really important these days when bullying is such a buzzword. So bullying isn't teasing between friends who are all of equal status. And even though that behavior may not be positive, they're all agreeing to be part of that and they're all participating. Bullying isn't when a student is having a bad day. Maybe the student didn't sleep well, or the student's grumpy, or we don't know what happened, but the student just isn't him or herself that day. Bullying isn't play fighting when all parties are in agreement. So, similarly to the first one, this may not be positive behavior that we want to see happening at school. It may be aggressive in nature. You may see shoving and pushing, but all students participating are there by choice, and they could leave if they wanted to. Bullying also isn't when a student says no to hanging out with a particular student or a group if the student has a good reason for why they don't want to spend time with that peer. That's actually discerning and something that we want to encourage in our kids. Finally, bullying isn't getting mad when a person who's been targeted finally lashes out and has enough. That's a natural reaction to being consistently antagonized. So now let's take a look at the different types of bullying that we'll talk about in a minute. There's physical bullying, verbal bullying, social, emotional, or relationship bullying, and then cyberbullying. And we'll talk a little bit more extensively about cyberbullying since that's likely to increase now during the time of COVID-19 when kids are spending more time at home and have more screen time. So let's take a look at physical bullying to begin with. Physical bullying is defined as hurting someone's body or destroying their property. Examples are things like hitting, kicking, spitting, pushing, and then backpack checking and shoulder checking. Physical bullying is highest in elementary and middle school and then declines in high school. But it doesn't go away. It actually just becomes more covert in nature. And instead of seeing things like punching and physical fights, we're more likely to see things like backpack checking or shoulder checking or more discreet types of tripping or shoving somebody. So as I mentioned in the introduction, my program of research is in the area of bullying intervention. In the past decade, I've spoken with many kids in Idaho about their experiences with bullying. And here's an example of what they've shared that they have seen in regard to physical bullying. A group of boys who stand in the middle of the hallway and yell in another boy's ear as he walks by. You also see that group of students slam his locker closed when he's trying to get things for class. So next, let's talk about verbal bullying. And that is saying or writing mean things about someone. Examples include things like teasing, name calling, inappropriate comments, taunting, and threatening someone. So here's an example of what a student has shared with us. In the hallway, you overhear some girls talking about another girl's clothes and hair. You hear them make fun of the girl, telling her things like, "Can't you afford a brush? Nice clothes," with a sarcastic and mean tone. The girl looks pretty upset and does not say anything back. The next type of bullying is social emotional or relationship. And that's hurting someone's reputation or relationships on purpose, telling other students not to be friends with somebody. So here are some examples: leaving someone out on purpose, spreading rumors, or embarrassing or humiliating someone. So here's an example that a student has shared with us. A group of girls are gossiping about another girl. They plan to start spreading a rumor saying she wants to start a fight with a peer. They plan to tell as many people as they can to create drama, and they start telling people right there at the bus stop. Finally, let's talk about cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is using electronic devices to hurt someone through text messages, social media, etc. I also wanted to mention that sexting in and of itself is not cyberbullying, but it could lead to cyberbullying. Also, in our state, in Idaho, sexting can be considered a felony. So I think this is important information for parents to know and for parents to educate their kids about. So when it comes to cyberbullying, this is what one student has shared with us that she has seen. A student is hanging out with friends after school, looking through a social media app. One girl friend requested another girl from school that she does not like. and then posted mean comments on the girls' pictures. This was not the first time I have seen this girl do this. So let's continue to talk about cyberbullying. Cyberbullying has different characteristics than in-person bullying. So for example, the person bullying can be anonymous. So it's easier to bully somebody behind the screen when your identity isn't revealed than when you're with them face to face. Also, this can increase both the intensity of the bullying and the frequency of the bullying. Also, cyberbullying can go viral. When you're at school, at least you're restricted by the students who are there witnessing the situation. When you're online, everyone who's on the social media app can see what's happening and actually participate in the bullying situation. And the consequences of that can be pretty devastating for the target. Also, during the time of COVID-19, when kids are at home and there's increased screen time, there also comes the possibility for increased cyberbullying. Kids who bully at school are likely to cyberbully. Also, parents may not have the time or the technology to monitor screen activity. When kids are at school, schools have programs in place that block certain websites, so when kids engage in those behaviors, they're likely to be caught. And that same technology may not be available at home. Later on, we'll talk about what parents can do to help prevent cyberbullying. Welcome back. In the previous clip, we talked about bullying statistics, what bullying is and what it isn't, and the different types of bullying, as well as negative consequences for targets. During this portion of the video, we'll talk about bystanders, bystander roles, and the negative consequences for students who witness bullying as bystanders. All right, so let's begin by talking about a bullying bystander. A bullying bystander is a student who witnesses bullying without taking part in it as either a target or a perpetrator. The majority of students at school indicate that they witness bullying. However, to give you a sense of numbers, about 8 out of 10 students report that they see bullying happening at school. Although we would expect that there are negative consequences for students who are targets of bullying, there are also negative consequences for students who witness bullying. So let's take a look at those next. Research shows that being exposed to bullying as a bystander in adolescence is a traumatic experience, and it's associated with sadness, helplessness, guilt, and isolation. In our own studies with Idaho students, my colleague and I have found that witnessing bullying as a bystander predicts depressive symptoms, even when accounting for prior victimization and perpetration. So that means that even when we use a statistical procedure to remove students' experiences with being a target or being a perpetrator from the equation, witnessing bullying as a bystander alone predicted psychological distress. And finally, bystanders are more likely to report symptoms of helplessness and suicidal ideation relative to students who are not involved in bullying. All right, so now let's take a look at the roles that bystanders can play when they witness bullying. The first role is the role of the assistant. The assistant helps the student who is actually doing the bullying. An example of what this might look like is a bully takes a student's lunchbox and hands it to the assistant, and the assistant runs away with the lunchbox laughing. The second role is the role of the reinforcer. Now, reinforcers are students who don't participate directly, but they watch or they laugh at the bullying situation. Some reinforcers may not even agree with what's going on, but they don't know what to do to stop the situation from happening. And they may end up watching just because they don't know what to do, which in turn encourages the bully to continue bullying because bullies like to have peer attention. The third role is the role of the outsider. Now, outsiders are students who do not want to be part of the bullying situation in any way. So they pretend that they don't see what's happening and they just keep on going. So even though outsiders walk away, they may still be disturbed about what they saw and experience negative emotional consequences. They may feel afraid that they could also be targeted, or feel bad for their peer who's being picked on. Now, the final role that we're going to talk about is the role of the defender. Defenders are students who act in pro-social ways to intervene on behalf of the target. In a little bit, I'll talk about ways in which students can act as defenders. I'll discuss strategies that are supported by research, are developmentally appropriate, and are safe for students to use. All right, so let's take a further look at defending behaviors. Interestingly, research shows that when bystanders defend targets, their behavior not only benefits their peers, but it also benefits them. When bystanders act as defenders, they report decreased feelings of loneliness, increased feelings of social support, higher levels of social acceptance, and lower levels of social rejection. In our studies here in Idaho, our research team has found that when students are trained to act as defenders, they report decreased depression and anxiety, and they also report increased self-esteem and sense of school belonging. So acting as a defender is good for everyone. It's good for the target, it's good for the bystander. And it's also good for students who are perpetrating the bullying, because research shows that bullying perpetrators have a higher level of substance abuse as adolescents, and they also report getting in trouble with the police more often later in life. During the next segment of the presentation, I'll talk about specific strategies that students can use during the bullying situation or immediately after. I'll also talk about what parents can do to help students, and especially what parents can do during this time when kids are home and cyberbullying is likely to increase. In the meantime, thank you for watching and take good care. Welcome back, everyone. During this segment, we're going to talk about specific strategies students can use when they witness bullying as bystanders. We're also going to talk about what parents can do to help students address bullying and cyberbullying. So let's get started. All right, so let's talk about 4 strategies that our research team teaches students to use when they witness bullying. The first one is stealing the show. And stealing the show is using humor or distraction to interrupt a bullying situation. This is well suited for students who like to be center of attention, like to act goofy, or are extroverted in nature. It may not be well suited for everyone. So one example of what this could look like is a defender sees a bullying situation and the person goes up to that situation and just starts doing their favorite Fortnite dance. That stops everything that's happening and shifts the attention away from the target and onto the defender. And bullies like to have peer attention, and that usually is enough to stop them from bullying. Now, if somebody's not so extroverted, another way that they could use stealing the show is to go up to a bullying situation and just have a conversation and be like, hey, did you guys see the football game last night? And that, again, disrupts the situation. It's interesting to note that in our studies, we found that middle school students tend to love stealing the show. Another important thing to consider, though, is that we teach students that if they see physical bullying or cyberbullying, we do not want them stealing the show. A second strategy that we teach students is turning it over. Now, this is simply identifying a safe and trusted adult at school and reporting the bullying situation. So as parents, one really helpful thing that you could do is help your kids identify some people at school that they feel like they can talk to. So when students witness physical bullying, we always encourage them to use this strategy. We don't want them getting involved and put their safety at risk. Same with cyberbullying. We ask them to use turning it over. As parents, you can encourage your kids to document when they see cyberbullying and then turn those documents into an adult. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Another strategy that we teach students is accompanying others. Accompanying others is when a defender goes up to the target after the bullying situation and offers support. So this can be done overtly. The defender says, hey, I saw what happened. That wasn't cool. Do you want to hang out? We also tell students that they can be more undercover about this because generally we know that students may not really want to talk about it and have it be so out in the open. So we say, hey, just go up to the target and invite them to have lunch or to hang out. So a student could say like, hey, I'm going that same way that you're going to math class. Do you want to walk together? That way, the target knows that there's somebody else at school that cares about them and that they're not alone. The final strategy that we teach students is coaching compassion. Now, coaching compassion is when a student witnesses bullying and then goes up to the perpetrator and says, hey, I saw what you did and that's not cool. This is a favorite strategy by high school students. However, we teach students that it's important for them to only use this strategy if they're older or they think that they'll be respected by the perpetrator. Otherwise, they may be made fun of and targeted themselves. So next, let's look at what parents can do to help students in addressing bullying and cyberbullying. Now, if your child talks about being a target or a witness of bullying or cyberbullying, it's important that you communicate your support. It's important that you let your child know that you don't think any type of bullying is okay and that you want it to stop. Also, it's important that you let your child know that the two of you can work together on this and that your child will know that you will take action and that your action will be reasonable and it will be something that your child can live with. Now, the next step may be for you to discuss with your child the importance of talking to a trusted school personnel about the bullying situation so that the school can be involved in solving the problem. Also, you may consider contacting the parents of the perpetrator so you can inform them of their child's behavior. And then finally, if there are physical threats involved or a crime has been committed, it's important that you contact the police. Let's wrap up this presentation by talking about some steps for parents that are specific to cyberbullying. The first one is to teach kids about the importance of documentation. Let your kids know that for authorities to be able to take action, it can require several events to be documented. So encourage your children to continue collecting evidence and to continue reporting. Another important tip is to teach students that in the case of cyberbullying, it is important for them to take a screenshot or a picture of the post immediately before the perpetrator has an opportunity to remove it. Also, it's important to let your kids know not to engage in social comments and public comments. It's okay for them to privately message the target to offer support. Finally, another important step specific to cyberbullying may be to contact your service provider and ask them to investigate the issue or remove the content of what has been posted. I hope this presentation has been helpful to you in developing some basic understanding and becoming equipped with some tools to help your kids address bullying and cyberbullying. Thank you for watching and take good care.